Hello. So I thought I would just dip back into the Scott Cawthon controversy that I somehow kicked the hornet's nest last week. I noticed an article in Kotaku where the writer said something along the lines of the new Five Nights at Freddy's security breach game looks better than the old games because it's not being made by a weird Christian dude. And I tweeted this. I tweeted this is a very childish take, Kotaku, and that tweet just blew up bigger than anything I've ever tweeted before in my life, which was weird and surprising. I'm not Christian, and I'm not a Five Nights at Freddy's fan. I'm not part of that community. I'm not a conservative. I have my. I mean, I guess I consider myself a lefty, but sort of an anti-woke lefty. So pretty much the worst kind of human being there is. And a lot of people sort of jumped on this. Jim Sterling, also known as Stephanie Sterling. I don't really know exactly how to refer to Jim these days because it's still the Jimquisition and stuff. So I don't know. But they comment or retweeted and said that no, he is a weird fundamentalist Christian, yada yada yada. A lot of people responded to me saying, "Oh, you poor Christian conservative, just love to play the victim." And it's like, okay, I'm not those things. I'm not playing the victim either because this is not about me. I think it's just kind of lame to say that a game looks worse because it's made by a Christian, because I don't think that's how it works. I'm not saying that calling him a weird Christian dude by itself is a big deal. I don't care about that. Go ahead and call him a weird Christian dude. The problem that I had with this is saying that this new game looks better when it's not made by a weird Christian dude. I feel like nobody kind of realized that this was the problem. A lot of people are like, well, he is weird. A lot of people are like, oh, this isn't such a horrible thing. Why are you making it such a big deal? Which I wasn't. I mean, this was just a throwaway tweet. But the point is that, if we're going to have tolerance and acceptance of people, we can't just pick and choose who those people are. I think we should be tolerant and accepting of trans people, gay people, straight people, black people, brown people, white people, everybody. And you can't see, one of the things that I think has really been lost on the left in the last decade or so is this idea that only the oppressed classes of people, these specific, protected classes, I guess, that have historically faced more discrimination, they are off limits, but everybody else is not off limits. They're on limits. So white dudes like me, we can be prejudiced. People can be prejudiced against us, and that doesn't count. Now, this is not because I feel like I am so oppressed or anything. I don't feel like I'm a victim. I don't feel like any of that. My problem is that this is a mentality I fundamentally disagree with. There's let me just pull this up real quick. There's an article I was reading today by Freddy DeBoer, who's one of my favorite Marxist bloggers. He's also kind of part of the anti-woke left, I would say. So we have a lot of similar opinions, although he's further to the left than I am on a lot of things. Him being a Marxist and me not being socialist at all. But still, I would say, well, I wouldn't say not at all. I believe in a lot of socialist ideas, but I'm also kind of more of a moderate economically. So he talks about moral universalism. And he writes, of all the concepts that underlie left discourse, moral universalism may be the most central and essential, though it is little discussed. Moral universalism is the simple belief that all human beings are equal in value and dignity and deserve political, legal, and moral equality. It does not mean and has never meant that all people are equal in abilities, nor is it an argument for equality of outcomes. This might seem like a pretty banal assumption, but remember that recognizably left-wing or socialist principles were first developed during a time when literal, dynastic aristocracies were assumed to be of inherently higher value than the common person, to say nothing of various bigotries tied to race, ethnicity, and gender. Moral universalism was a powerful and radical idea relative to that backdrop. It was moral universalism that demanded an end to slavery, to sexism, to caste systems, to socioeconomic inequality. Black people deserve freedom because they are people. Women deserve equal rights because they are people. The poor deserve material security and comfort because they are people. This is not merely an elegant philosophical position, but the basis of left political strategy. Stressing common humanity rather than fixating on demographic differences means we can have the biggest tent imaginable. All it requires is believing that we must leave no one behind as a movement and society. In contrast, today's left of center is rabidly attached to moral particularism, though they mostly haven't ever really thought this through. By moral particularism, I mean the entrenched and widespread notion that certain classes of people are, by dint of their identity categories, more important than others, more deserving of political action, more noble and holy. People will deny that when asked directly, but all of their rhetoric and priorities demonstrate that tacit belief. In argument after argument, liberals today try to settle matters by insisting that a given group's greater historical oppression means that they must be centered, put first, their interests elevated over those of others. A commitment to moral universalism, of course, demands that these historical oppressions be addressed until these groups reach the position of equality, at which point their rights will simply be defended like everyone else's. But today's liberal practice, if not the explicit ideology, demands that we must relentlessly prioritize some groups over others, and that spending time or energy devoted to those outside of those groups is somehow to take the side of oppression. Debates within the coalition frequently amount to people trying to insist that they are speaking on behalf of the most oppressed, and that whichever position succeeds in that contest is necessarily the righteous cause. Moral particularism not only does not advance an ethic where everyone deserves equal consideration and equally fair treatment, it actively disdains that notion and calls it fascist. He goes on to say, if you don't believe me and your Twitter account occupies any kind of progressive space, go on there and tweet, quote, I think Democrats and the left should work to improve conditions for poor white people as well. Their suffering matters, end quote. The notion of the left working for poor people as poor people, rather than merely as an extension of some identity frame, would be totally uncontroversial among the vast majority of left-leaning people throughout the existence of the modern political spectrum. Today, go ahead and tweet that out if you have a lot of liberal and leftist followers. See how that works out for you. I could go on, and it's a great piece, but the point being is this: I saw this firsthand with this tweet because I was defending someone who is not part of my group. I was defending a cultural conservative, a Republican, and a Christian. So I am a politically eclectic deviant, essentially. I'm not I'm not a conservative Christian. I believe in this moral, what Freddie's talking about, moral universalism, where we treat everyone as essentially worthy of fair treatment and equality, where we treat everyone as part of this big tent, where even Trump voters and you know, poor white people who probably are a little racist and bigoted, they also deserve compassionate politics. That we can't just say, oh, fuck all those assholes, fuck the MAGA types because they don't believe in the things we believe in. No, I think that if you materially improve the lives of people throughout the country, in rural communities as well as urban, whites as well as, you know, black people, Native American people, everybody. If your political action and dialogue is focused on making it better for everybody, that's to me a version of the left, a version of left politics that makes sense and that is sustainable. Because I think if you start using identity politics as your method of justice, and you start dividing us more, you just divide people more, and that's exactly what, you know, the powers that be want. It's easier if we're all divided than if we're all united, right? So when I tweeted this, I say it's a childish take because I think that when you start to say, well, video games made by Christians don't look as good as video games made by non-Christians. Well, I'm not saying Christians are this oppressed class by any means, but this doesn't help any sort of social justice cause by dividing people, again, because there are many social justice-minded Christians out there too. But that's not even the point, because if you really believe in social justice and you believe in economic justice and you believe in a better society, then that has to include everybody, including people that we find distasteful, including people who maybe voted for Trump. Sorry to say, that's just how it works. Otherwise, we become more and more divided, and that just fuels this divisive politics that, you know, the talking heads on Fox News and MSNBC and everywhere else, they thrive off of that. And so Stephanie Sterling made a video talking about all the transphobia they received after they retweeted my tweet. And of course, that's horrible. And I once again always encourage people not to engage in that. But as you know, for me, Sterling's take feels off. Like, as someone who has done so much to defend consumer rights and to call out bad corporate behavior and other, industry ills, it just feels wrong to, I mean, it feels like, see, in this particular, I'm not saying he shouldn't criticize Scott Cawthon's political donations. Everyone's fair game for criticism. My only take here was that you shouldn't start saying things like, oh, this game looks worse because a Christian made it. It'd be like, I mean, and I used an example, like, what if you said this game looks worse because some weird Muslim made it? Again, it's not because maybe this Muslim is weird. That's fine. You can call a Muslim weird. But to say that the game looks worse because a Muslim made it would be bigoted. And people are like, well, Muslims and Jews and stuff, they're oppressed classes. So you can't, that's not a good analogy. But it doesn't matter. I mean, okay, what if Christians were an oppressed class? Suddenly they're deserving of equal treatment? I just think everybody's deserving of that. And when you start to go down this road, you neuter your ability to have meaningful political action and outcomes. Because really what you need to do in politics is create a bigger coalition, a bigger tent. You need to get as many people on board as possible. And if you're constantly sort of casting out the wrong thinkers and the people who don't meet, that don't meet the requirements, whatever this checklist is, people like, that have different opinions on these things, people with different belief backgrounds, people who are not part of the LGBTQ community, people who are not on board with woke politics, but who still want to pursue some sort of, better world. You have to include differing viewpoints, differing backgrounds, different belief systems in this larger coalition, or you're going to fail. And what happens here is, of course, on Twitter, all the most unpleasant people on both sides come out. So you have a lot of people who are just, calling me a Nazi because I said I made that tweet. I don't know. It's pretty, so I got a lot of like abuse and hatred too. Sterling got a lot from people who are mocking, his identity and or their identity. I'm sorry if I'm misgendering. I really am sorry. It's so much has changed, and it's a little hard to wrap my brain around. But I'm trying to do my best. Of course, on Twitter, a lot of very negative people from both sides come out and attack the other side, and it's awful. And this is because we live in a world that is constantly trying to divide us. And so what I would like to see more of is instead of I don't want to see people, making transphobic comments or attacking people that are in a different group like Christians, because I think that the only chance we have is working together as people. We're all people. We're all in this together. So one last thing, a lot of people are like, well, he donated to all these horrible politicians who support anti-LGBTQ policies. Okay, that's true. And by all means, criticize him for that. But again, I would say, we're living in a country where, tens of millions of people voted, 70 something million people voted for Trump. We can't just continue down this road where we consider everyone on the other side an enemy. And I see the GOP and I see conservatives doing this to liberals. I see it go from both directions where people just treat each other like they're this existential threat to each other's existence. And it's not true. I think that we still have more in common with one another than not. If we stripped away all this politics, we took away Fox News and MSNBC and we got rid of social media and people were just living and we just all went to the fair together. For the most part, people want and need and desire the same things, which is, security, a roof over their heads, food, family, love, all those sort of basic innate things that sort of keep us alive and sustained. We all kind of want the same things. We just disagree about how to get there. And I guess my point is just that I think we can do better than this. And I think I critique the left a lot because that's where I see room for a lot of, I think there's lots of very compassionate conservatives also, but I think that overall, certainly as in my experience growing up and my formative years in college and everything else, where I've always seen hope is, in this, the broad coalition of the left, of tolerance, of acceptance, and trying to make a better world. And just lately, it just seems like that promise has fallen by the wayside, and identity politics have sort of subsumed and overwhelmed everything else. And I think that's problematic for a lot of reasons. And so that's all I'm going to say about that. So no ill will towards Sterling or his followers, and most of them won't even see this anyways. So that's all I have to say about that. Peace.